Have you ever felt like something is watching you through the screen? Not in a movie, but in real life. Maybe while watching an old broadcast, a corrupted VHS, a strange YouTube video that feels just a little too real. That feeling subtle, eerie, inescapable's what analog horror feeds on. A psychological descent that uses outdated media, distorted signals and lo-fi visuals to disturb you on a level most horror stories can't even reach. It's not about gore, it's not about jump scares, it's about that creeping dread that something is off and yet you can't look away. Analog horror is not just a genre, it's an experience. It often starts with something simple. A fake public broadcast, a warning from an unknown agency, a distorted emergency alert with a robotic voice telling you to stay indoors because they are outside. The message repeats, only this time, there's something behind the voice, a low, breathing static it sounds like. Someone else is on the line, you don't know who they are, but the voice seems so sure, so calm, so final. The grainy video continues, the screen flickers and then it cuts. No resolution, no credits, no explanation. You're left staring at a black screen, hearing your own heartbeat and suddenly a room doesn't feel safe anymore. This is the art of analog horror. It thrives on questions, on uncertainty, on making you wonder if what you just saw was a story, or a broadcast that accidentally slipped into your reality. A tape, a warning. It doesn't care about resolution. It doesn't care about giving you answers. Even when your vision goes dark. Even when something climbs through your window. But also, strange things. There are real stories of people finding secondhand tapes with footage that made no sense. But aren't you these versions replace your loved ones, your friends? And you can't tell the difference. Until it's too late. They use fonts, music, voiceovers, even camera limitations from the era they're emulating. That authenticity tricks your brain into thinking, wait, is this real? A man in a Max Headroom mask appeared on screen, rambling nonsense. The hijack lasted less than 2 minutes, but it was never solved. No one was caught, no motive was found, and no one ever claimed responsibility. A man staring into the camera for 7 minutes straight. A distorted children's cartoon that plays backwards. A commercial for a product that doesn't exist, followed by a number you're told never to call. Some believe analog horror was born on YouTube, but its true roots go much deeper. Let's go back to the 80s and 90s, a time when VHS tapes were everywhere, when people recorded TV shows, news, family moments, and symbols that repeat across different series, phrases that appear in unrelated videos, maybe hidden coordinates, spectrogram messages, reversed audio with phrases like, something else is riding through them. That by imitating these old broadcast formats, we accidentally tune in to something we weren't meant to see. Like pressing the wrong frequency on a radio and hearing a voice whisper your name. These weren't art projects. These were accidents. Or maybe remnants of something trying to communicate. Analog horror uses that idea and pushes it to the extreme. It builds fictional universes out of corrupted signals. Entire worlds where something has gone terribly wrong and the only trace left behind is a broadcast, playing the exact same whispers. Channels like Local 58 create fake news stations that seem completely normal at first, until they tell you to look at the moon and never stop looking. Other creators, like the Mandela Catalogue, introduce ideas of alternate versions of people copies that look just like you. The video glitched not just on YouTube but on their monitor. The player crashed but the audio kept playing for 7 minutes. All of it distorted whispers. The genius of these series isn't just the scare factor, it's how real they feel. They mimic old TV formatting perfectly. But let's not forget the scariest part. Some of it might be, in many series, the antagonist isn't a creature, it's not a killer. It's the signal, a force that corrupts reality by simply being observed. Let me explain. Back in 1987 in Chicago, 2 major TV stations were hijacked live on air. You begin to question the authenticity of that static you saw last night. You start to wonder if that emergency alert on your phone was really just a test. About interdimensional broadcasting, about collective hallucination through analog tech, about whether nostalgia is a weapon or a gateway. It doesn't say, this is happening to you. It just makes you feel like it is, and the psychological science behind why lo-fi horror can be more effective than Hollywood production. To this day, it remains one of the most chilling, unsolved signal intrusions in media history. Many consider this moment to be the birth of analog horror before it even had a name. But here's where things get truly disturbing. There are now entire forums, subreddits, and communities that analyze these fictional horror broadcasts, and sometimes they find patterns we never left. They're inside the signal. Your reality is corrupted. Are these creators planting shared clues as an argle? Some fans believe analog horror is not just a genre, it's a window. There are even reports of viewers experiencing strange effects after watching certain series, malfunctions with electronics, audio playback when nothing is open, reoccurring dreams with identical imagery from the videos. In one Reddit thread, a user described watching a lesser-known analog horror series late at night. The user thought it was just a bug until the next morning, when their alarm clock, which hadn't worked in years, suddenly powered on. Coincidence? Or was something watching back? This idea that media itself can carry a presence is deeply embedded in the analog horror mythos. You watch it and it rewrites you, like a virus made of light and sound. This is what makes analog horror so effective. It breaks the fourth wall without announcing it. You start noticing patterns in your own devices. Because what if it wasn't? What if the signal has already reached you? What if, by watching this video, you're already part of the transmission? This series will take you deeper. We're going to investigate real-life cases of unexplained signal intrusions, terrifying YouTube series that blur fiction and reality. We'll also dig into the theories about government Each episode will be more disturbing than the last. But for now, I'll leave you with a warning. When the signal ends, don't turn off your device. Wait, listen, because sometimes the broadcast continues, even after the screen goes dark. Before YouTube, before the word analog horror even existed, there were real events, broadcasts that went wrong, signals that shouldn't have been moments where reality twisted in front of millions of eyes, and no one had an explanation. These weren't stories. They weren't creepy. They actually happened. Let's rewind to November 22nd, 1987. It was a cold Sunday night in Chicago. Most people were relaxing at home, watching the 9 o'clock news. But 2 hours later, during a rerun of Doctor Who on PBS, he came back. A living fever dream, no context, no meaning, just trauma through static. It's not fiction. Let's go back a full decade earlier to 1977. In the south of England, people were watching the local evening news on a station called Southern Television. Suddenly, the picture began to wobble. The sound dropped, and then a voice.com/Metallica the worldly began to speak. It's a recorded fact, and that's what makes it terrifying. Because if someone could do it, then what's stopping someone from doing it again? For nearly 6 minutes, viewers listened as this strange, robotic voice delivered a message. It warned humanity about its destructive path. It urged peace, spiritual growth, a unification of all peoples. It said humanity had a choice: to evolve or to be destroyed. And then, just as suddenly as it had started, the regular news returned. The voice was calm, the message was delivered with authority, and for a few horrifying seconds, people believed it. What's worse, similar zombie alerts were aired that same year in Michigan, New Mexico, and California. Each one slightly different, but always in the same unsettling tone. These systems are tightly controlled. Only government agencies are allowed to access them. And yet, they've been hijacked too. Same mask, same bizarre setup. But this time it was darker, more disturbing. He waved a glove, spoke gibberish, moaned strangely, and that idea that someone, somewhere, could override reality with fiction so convincingly. That's the essence of analog horror. Viewers were watching a regular program when their screens suddenly cut to an image, a building on fire. No sound, no music, just flames. The footage looped for over 90 seconds. Some viewers reported a strange hum in the background. The max headroom signal, the virulent broadcast, the zombie alerts. They're the bones on which everything else was built. What if the emergency alert told you something real, and you ignored it? It plants a seed in your mind and lets it grow, slowly, quietly, until you're lying in bed at 2 a.m. staring at your TV, wondering if the static you're hearing. We'll dive even deeper into the birth of the VHS era, and how home video itself became a new haunted medium. We'll explore how forgotten tapes, lost educational films, and old-school training videos evolved into something eerie, twisted, and unforgettable. But for now, remember, the scariest stories aren't the ones made up for views or clicks. The scariest ones are the ones we still can't explain. It's just static. Modern creators like Kane Pixels, Gemini Home Entertainment, and Local 58 didn't just invent creepy footage. They took inspiration from moments that actually happened, and asked, what if it went further? Others claimed they saw flickering text between frames, too fast to read. It's what your brain fills in. Analog horror is a space between frames, the silence between messages, the idea that your television isn't just a screen, it's a window, and sometimes something looks back. When the show finally resumed, no one knew what had happened. The station claimed it wasn't them. Investigators found no explanation. The footage was never traced. It forces you to ask, if this were happening for real, would I even know? The British government said it was probably just a prankster with a powerful transmitter. It turns ordinary media, VHS tapes, news reports, public access channels, into something sinister. A weatherman who stares too long at the camera. A PSA that repeats the same phrase again and again until the words lose meaning. A cartoon that suddenly cuts to static. And then something else. Something not meant to be there. But again, no one was ever found. And this was 1977. No computers. No digital editing. You either had a huge broadcast antenna, or you didn't. If it was a prank, it was the most sophisticated one of the decade. And for many, it didn't feel like a prank at all. And at the very end, someone off-screen spanked him with a fly swatter as he screamed. Then, Black screen silence, but impossible. That's the core of what analog horror captures. Not jump scares, not blood and gore, but the feeling of watching something you were never supposed to see and not knowing if it was real. Nothing unusual, until suddenly, the screen flickered, the audio cut out, and then he appeared. A robotic voice calmly announced, "Civil authorities in your area have reported that the bodies of the dead are rising from their graves." Yes, you heard that right. The official emergency alert tone, followed by a zombie apocalypse warning. Viewers were shocked, anchors looked confused, and even after the broadcast resumed, the tension lingered. A man in a cheap rubber mask trying to mimic Max Headroom, a glitchy AI-style TV character popular at the time. But this wasn't the quirky Max from commercials, this was something else. Something wrong. His head moved in sharp, twitchy angles. The camera was tilted. A metal sheet spun eerily behind him. His voice was warped and unstable. He mocked the news, sang strange tunes, quoted Coke slogans. His entire presence was chaotic, surreal, like a nightmare broadcast into real life. Then it cut, the screen returned to normal. No one knew what they had just witnessed. That was it. No credits, no warning, no explanation. And to this day, no answers. The hijacker was never caught. Authorities investigated, but nothing ever came of it. No suspects, no arrests, just pure, unfiltered weirdness leaked straight into the homes of thousands of people. That mystery, the randomness, the surrealism, the realness, it became one of the most iconic and terrifying moments in broadcast history. And years later, it became the perfect foundation for analog horror. Think about it, someone hijacked a live television signal to send out, but that wasn't the first time the airwaves were breached. This is the voice of Verlan, a representative of the Ashtar Galactic Command. Yes, that's what it actually said. No one ever found the source. The broadcast station denied responsibility. The feeling that moment left behind, the confusion, the sense that maybe you had witnessed something real and it didn't stop there. Let us talk about emergency alert systems. Those loud tones that interrupt your favorite shows to warn about tornadoes, wildfires, or worse. In 2013, during a local newscast in Montana, the emergency alert system suddenly cut in. The station quickly apologized, claiming their system had been hacked. But what made it so disturbing was how real it felt. And once again, no one was caught. Someone had figured out how to use the very systems designed to protect us, to frighten us. Another case, less famous, but equally chilling, took place in 2007, in parts of New Jersey. This was no movie, no viral campaign, just a moment that shouldn't have happened. And that's what makes analog horror so effective. It doesn't just show you monsters, it becomes one. What makes these stories terrifying isn't what you see. And let's not forget, this genre wouldn't even exist without these real events. What if the Max Headroom broadcast kept going? What if the Vrillin message returned? But it wasn't peaceful this time. Analog horror doesn't scream, it whispers, it suggests, or something else. In the next chapter, because when a signal is hijacked, and no one ever takes credit, that silence is louder than anything else. By the late 80s and early 90s, something changed. Television was no longer the only window into the unknown. Suddenly, every home had a VCR. People could record their favorite shows, rent movies, or even make their own tapes. It was a new era of media freedom. And with that freedom came something else. The way the image warps when you rewind or fast forward. Unlike modern digital media, VHS feels fragile. It degrades. It warps with time. It's alive, in a way. And that's what makes it the perfect vessel for fear. Something darker. Something that still lingers in the dusty boxes of forgotten closets and old thrift store bins, hollow like they had witnessed something forbidden. The VHS copies vanished quickly, and no one has claimed ownership since. But online forums are still obsessed, because people want to believe it's real, that somewhere, a copy still exists. No one knows where it came from. No official version exists. But rumors say it was first spotted on underground forums in the early 2000s. People online claimed that anyone who watched The Grifter experienced severe nightmares. The series is presented as if you're watching a local public access station, where it reports PSA's children's programming, but as you watch, subtle abnormalities begin to appear. Creatures that don't belong, phrases that don't make sense. VHS horror taps into the fear of what we've forgotten. If someone recorded something dark, twisted, or cursed, it stays. One infamous story tells of a tape found in a Pennsylvania thrift shop, marked only with a single word. The tape contained 43 minutes of static, followed by a looping video of a man standing in a doorway, back turned to the camera. Every 13 seconds, the footage glitched, and the man was closer. By the end, he was right in front of the lens. Motionless, the tape was thrown away, but supposedly, it kept reappearing on the shelf. Different cities, same tape, and once your trust is gone, anything becomes terrifying. A smiling cartoon face, a test pattern, a piano note, a simple phrase like "we're always watching." It lingers, and the only way to get rid of it is to pass it on. They were made by accident. Tapes found at estate sales, forgotten training videos, religious PSAs that feel just a little too intense. There are forums dedicated to collecting these found horrors. Not fiction, but real tapes that feel cursed just by how unnatural they are. Sometimes the truth is weirder than fiction. On doubt, it doesn't give you clear answers, it gives you pieces. Clues enough to keep you watching, enough to make you wonder if there's something beneath the fiction. Kids in bright outfits demonstrate how to crawl under smoke. Everything seems normal, until the tape skips. And digital manipulation took these analog nightmares and amplified them into full-blown digital AI, interactive stories, and endless rabbit holes. But for now, remember this. Behind every forgotten tape, every warped reel, and every broken plastic case, the narrator's voice becomes distorted. The children begin repeating the same motion over and over. One of them stares directly into the camera, unblinking. A title card appears. Do not resist. Then static. What we've lost, or worse, what we were never supposed to find again. The VHS aesthetic taps into nostalgia, a dangerous nostalgia. We associate old tapes with childhood, home videos, simpler times. But what happens when those tapes lie to us? When they show us something that warps those memories into fear? VHS tapes that teach you about the woodcrawlers or the iris, or the strange cosmic beings that are reclaiming Earth. But every episode twists into something unnatural. In one video, the emergency broadcast tells viewers not to look at the moon, and you're left questioning whether you just saw a documentary or a warning, and if they already have, to take shelter and don't go near loved ones. Another video simulates a broadcast hijacking where the feed is slowly overtaken by a cryptic cult-like message, or using the exact style and tone of real 80s broadcasts. One user said their nose started bleeding after watching. Another claimed their lights began flickering for days. Whether the video ever truly existed or not, the idea of it spread like a virus. It feels like something you could have accidentally taped when recording cartoons in 1986. And now, decades later, you're watching something that was never meant for you. And that's the power of VHS horror. It doesn't need to be real. It just needs to feel real. The video itself, a series of disturbing images and low-quality footage. A crying child, a man screaming in reverse, surgical tools on a bloody tray, not a tape. Technically, it was a mysterious computer game supposedly found on the deep web, but the only known footage of it was distributed, you guessed it, on burned VHS copies at horror conventions. People who watched it described black and white corridors, ghostly children, and political figures appearing and vanishing. Random bursts of static screams, number sequences, and at one point, a blurry figure standing motionless, arms raised, staring. Throughout the video, a faint moaning sound can be heard in the background. It's barely audible, like someone trapped far away begging. We're talking about the VHS horror phenomena, not just horror movies, but horror born from the very medium of VHS itself. There's something inherently eerie about VHS tapes. The grainy resolution, the static flickers, the warped colors. Let's begin with a tape known only as the grip. What makes it horrifying isn't just the content, it's the legend. Then there's Sad Satan. The footage didn't explain anything. There was no plot, no structure, just a series of disturbing scenes that left viewers feeling cold. Analog horror creators took that exact feeling and turned it into something larger, entire universes of fear. Take Local 58, one of the most famous analog horror projects ever made. Nothing about it feels made up. It feels like something that could have really aired, and maybe did. That's the power of VHS-based analog horror. It mimics reality so well that your brain can't tell the difference. Then there's Gemini Home Entertainment, which takes the idea even further. Its videos resemble educational science tapes, wildlife documentaries, and vintage nature recordings. Each tape starts normal, harmless, but within minutes, you realize you're watching something infected. The voiceovers remain calm. The visuals grow distorted. This subgenre plays with liminality, the feeling of being between places, between meanings. You see, VHS isn't like digital. You can't just hit delete. You can't erase the physical. There are even urban legends about cursed VHS tapes that refuse to be destroyed. Of course, none of this is confirmed. That's part of the genre's beauty. Analog horror thrives on uncertainty, and it's not just about scary visuals. Imagine finding an old educational tape labeled Fire Safety 1991. You play it. A cheerful narrator welcomes you. You rewind, but the tape is different now. Analog horror creators have mastered this psychological trap. They start with trust, familiarity, then they break it. And here's the scariest part. Some of the most unsettling VHS horrors weren't made by YouTubers, because VHS doesn't lie. It just decays. And in that decay, monsters live. In the next chapter, we'll explore how the rise of YouTube. There might be something still waiting to be watched. And it's not finished with you yet. As VHS tapes decayed and old TV signals faded into static, the fear didn't die, it evolved. The early 2000s brought something VHS could never offer: infinite access. YouTube, forums, blogs, Suddenly anyone could upload anything, no curation, no limits. And that's when analog horror mutated into something even more disturbing, something interactive. Digital experiences that blurred the line between fiction and truth. And analog horror became their most haunting weapon. It started with mimicry. Creators wanted to capture that eerie VHS feeling in a digital space. Low-res, filters, static overlays, broadcast fonts. People began uploading fake found footage, pretending it came from lost television stations. But these weren't just tributes to VHS, they were building worlds. Connected videos, hidden codes, timelines, basic instructions. If you see someone in your house who looks like you, do not engage. It started with a guy uploading tapes from an abandoned film project. Videos show old security footage, emergency broadcasts, even religious tapes. But every piece is infected. A voice glitch, a warped face. The story unfolds slowly. VHS training videos for a fictional company called Bond's Burgers. Harmless at first, until characters start referencing missing employees. Strange glitches appear in the footage. A cartoon rabbit begins moving when it shouldn't. Faces change, names vanish. The more you watch, the deeper you go into a puzzle that is far more tragic and horrific than it first appears. A static-covered warning that feels too real, too personal. What makes Mandela Catalogue so effective isn't just the horror, it's the familiarity. Dozens of interconnected videos, timelines, alternate versions of real history. Fans spend hours building wikis just to keep track, and that's part of the magic. These stories don't just entertain, they consume. You don't watch a few videos and move on. TikTok creators are now using short analog horror bursts to 15 seconds of disturbing footage. Warped faces, glitching audio. On the internet, you can stumble into things you weren't supposed to find because there's no limit to how deep it can go. No limit to what you might find. Old channels with a few hundred views. Videos titled only with numbers. Thumbnails that look like corrupted files. You click, they use them to lie better. To make us believe something impossible is real. Just for a moment, and suddenly, you're watching a message from something pretending to be human. A voice whispering, "Don't look behind you." Viewers scroll past, but it lingers. It stays. Videos with no title. Comments disabled. No views. You open it, thinking you're safe, but the voice on screen says your name. Even games like Petscop, a fake PS1 game played on YouTube, use analog horror aesthetics to tell stories that feel like forgotten memories, or broken ones. Everything today is crystal clear, 4K, and because of that, we no longer trust it. We crave imperfection, grain static, mistakes. We fear it, and we're drawn to it. It feels more honest, more real. You fall into a rabbit hole you might never escape. Every video feels like something you might have seen once at 3 a.m. on an old TV, something you forgot. Until now, real phone numbers you can call and hear distorted messages. The horror follows you, from your laptop to your phone, to your dreams, harmless. Until viewers started noticing a strange figure in the background. A tall, faceless man, always watching. The deeper you went, the worse it got. It presents itself as an alternate history of the United States. New projects appear daily, many vanish, some evolve, and some just sit there waiting, like cursed files no one's opened in years. At first it looks like a strange documentary channel, exploring Mount Rushmore, the Lincoln Monument, and bizarre government secrets. But as you watch, reality unravels. You learn about creatures living inside national monuments, about the America First alternate timeline, about presidents replaced by sound-based entities. It sounds insane, but the presentation is so matter-of-fact, so dry and convincing, that it becomes terrifyingly believable. Videos contain distorted audio, codes hidden in static, and mysterious operators leaving cryptic comments. They make the viewer feel safe with nostalgia, bright colors, friendly voices, instructional formats. But underneath, there's rot. And once you realize that, everything becomes a threat. Viewers became participants. They weren't just watching horror, they were helping uncover myths that felt as real as your own memories. This was the birth of ARG's alternate reality games. One of the earliest and most iconic examples was Marble Hornets. It didn't start with jump scares or blood. Marble Hornets gave birth to an entire subculture. Thousands of creators started making their own tape-based mysteries, each building on that same analog aesthetic. But as technology advanced, so did the methods. And soon, analog horror wasn't just about grainy filters anymore. It was about immersion. Take the Mandela Catalogue, a project that exploded in popularity for its brutal, deeply psychological approach. It begins like a PSA.com narrator, black screen. Simple, terrifying. The series plays with the concept of alternates, entities that imitate humans but aren't quite right. Then there's the Walton Files. It takes the same immersive approach, but mixes it with 80s animation and twisted corporate mascots. Both of these series rely on something crucial: trust. They build it, then destroy it. But here's where digital analog horror takes things even further. Some creators no longer rely on just the videos. They expand their worlds across platforms. Twitter accounts from in-universe characters, websites with hidden folders. One brilliant example is the Monument Mythos, a sprawling series by Alex Cas. The Monument Mythos thrives on volume. That's the evolution of analog horror in the digital age. It's not just passive fear anymore, it's interactive dread. And while YouTube is the main platform, horror has spread even further. This digital age also brought back the fear of discovery. That feeling of accidental horror is key, but digital media amplifies it 100-fold. But here is the strange twist. Analog horror is thriving in the digital world because we've gone so far into hype. That's why these creators don't just use old filters for aesthetic. And in that moment, we let it in. But maybe the most unsettling part of this digital horror boom is that it never ends. Channels with 5 subscribers, and the screen goes black. So why do we keep watching? Why do we sit alone in the dark? Headphones on, eyes glued to a screen, letting these distorted, flickering, corrupted videos crawl under our skin? Why are we drawn to something that's built on confusion, fear, and silence? Because analog horror doesn't just scare us, it haunts us. It doesn't scream in your face. It doesn't chase you down a hallway. It whispers, it flickers, it waits. It invites you to come closer, then shows you something that feels almost real. Almost like a memory. Almost like something you forgot on purpose. Traditional horror gives you answers. There's a killer, a curse, a ghost, a final girl, a conclusion. But analog horror, it gives you fragments. Static, incomplete timelines, videos missing context, a face that shifts too fast to register. It makes you do the work. It makes you piece together the narrative. And in doing that, it pulls you in deeper than any slasher movie ever could. And that's what makes it so powerful. It's not just fiction, it's a feeling. Think about it. We watch the same video over and over, trying to catch that one frame we missed. We pause, we rewind. We open comment sections and Reddit threads, desperate to understand what we just saw. We aren't just being scared because now you're part of it. And that sensation, the act of decoding fear, becomes addictive. We're being consumed. Analog horror doesn't show you everything. It implies a still image, a warning screen, a voice that says, he is here, and that's it. That deep, shared anxiety we have about technology, memory, the media we consume, and the world we live in. These stories are about losing control, losing reality, watching your own face on a screen and knowing it isn't you, hearing a voice on the phone that sounds like your mother, but isn't. And AI and surveillance are part of our daily lives. Those questions don't feel so fictional anymore. Receiving a warning from a future that hasn't happened yet. You don't need to see the monster. You already imagined it. And what you imagined is always worse. But there's another layer, a darker one. A reason why analog horror resonates so deeply, especially with people growing up in the digital age. We want to feel something raw, and analog horror gives us that. A return to chaos. A break in the signal. A reminder that not everything needs to be clean or explained or safe. It's the feeling that something is wrong, but you can't explain it. It taps into that cultural unease. It's not just ghosts and creatures anymore, it's existential horror. What if everything you know can be rewritten? What if history is a lie? What if the person standing next to you isn't real? Analog horror thrives on those questions. And in a world where we trust technology more than people, we're deep. That the sound in your headphones might glitch. That something, somewhere, is watching you now. We're not scared of monsters, we're scared of recognizing ourselves in something and let's be honest, we love it. We chase it. We want to be scared. We want something to break through the noise of perfectly curated feeds and algorithmic content. It reminds us that horror doesn't have to be expensive. It just has to be true. A grainy image, a distorted laugh, a black screen with text that says, do not trust him. That's all it takes. That's all it's ever taken. It goes even deeper into the darkest corners of analog horror, because the real power of analog horror isn't in what it shows. It's in what it leaves behind. The lingering discomfort, the theories you can't stop thinking about, the sense that the screen might flicker, and maybe that's the final truth. We don't watch analog horror because we like being scared. We watch it because it reminds us that fear is still possible in a world that thinks it has seen everything. And somewhere, deep down, we're grateful for that. If this video got inside your head, even just a little, then do me a favor. Hit the like button, subscribe to the channel, and tap the bell so you don't miss what's coming next. There's a lot more fear to come, and some of it is already here. And hey, there's another video on the screen right now. One I know you'll love. Go watch it. I'll see you there. Stay safe and remember, if your TV starts speaking to you, don't answer back.